Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, it is Nick here, back to your daily crypto news and analysis. And today we are going to be talking about Ripple and XRP, as well as the vast majority of crypto and finance. And guys, I just want to advise everyone to stay until the end of the video. We are going to go over substantial amounts of information. We're going to talk about a few things, and we are going to address a few things as well. But with that, let's stop wasting time. Let's dive in. Let's start off with this. So for those out there that are going to cry and say, oh, this is old news, don't worry. We are going to connect the dots here. So go all the way back to September of 2016. This is where we've seen Standard Chartered completing a strategic investment into Ripple. The quotes here are regarding digitization of its entire business model. We do see a quote from the global head of transaction banking. Digitization is a key priority for the bank to facilitate trade, commerce, and investment. We can better serve our clients by connecting business communities in a more efficient way. Ripple is one of the most advanced DLT companies in the industry with immense experience in financial services and compliance. Through this investment, we can leverage Ripple's expertise and co-develop more commercially viable applications to support the evolving needs of our clients and their ecosystems. Now, as we look at this, right, what's funny is that this is right on par with the Internet of Value. Look at this. This is a quote from Chris Larson. Standard Chartered's commitment to digitization and distributed financial technology complements our vision of a future where value moves as easily as information moves today. Now, outside of this, what's very interesting about this is what we've seen with ISO 20022. Because just recently at CBOS 2023, Standard Chartered was there talking about ISO 20022 and the push for global adoption. This is the global head of payments talking about the progress regarding ISO 20022. Now, I'm not going to play the video. The key highlights from the video and what they talked about was, one, the global adoption of the standard and what it will mean for the future of cross-border payments and whether countries are prepared for the end of the coexistence period in 2025. The key trends in digital payments and the future of payments tokenization, and also the importance of collaboration between banks and fintechs when it comes to keeping up with technological change. Now, we already know that Standard Chartered, like I said, has been working with Ripple for a while. They also talked about how Ripple was the most advanced DLT company in the space. Fast forward to today, we know that DLT and blockchain is the big hit. Everyone is tapping into it now. Everyone is talking about it. The BIS, the World Economic Forum, the IMF, World Bank, you name it. Collaboration between the public and the private sector is at the utmost most important thing right now that we have seen regarding a lot of these documents though. This is where I do think that Ripple becomes a key player as well. Outside of this, we know from Swift, which I did include this in a recent video. This is from ISO 20022. Let's do it. We know that November, next month, everything gets set in place, right? This is the beginning of the journey to adoption of this type of technology. And it's all through this messaging standard. Swift even called it the big go live date, which was November 20th, 2023. This is going to change everything regarding payment structure. We also know from recent documents from the ISO20022.org website and even from Swift, rich data usage is set to go live in November as well. And with this, we could start to kind of see crypto being incorporated through the messages as well. We actually see at the top there, the ISO standard messaging or managing digital token identifiers, DTI, is ISO 24165. But beyond this, we do see, yes, cryptocurrencies can be transported as data content in the ISO 20022 messages, but are not validated. Cryptocurrencies validation will be implemented in future version of the ISO 20022 messages, which they are preparing to incorporate crypto within the messages. And we also do see, can a blockchain company be ISO 20022 compliant, which we already know the answer is yes, because we know that Ripple was one of the first companies to be ISO 20022 compliant that has already tapped into blockchain and DLT. But beyond all of this, the reason why I bring this up is because now we are starting to see major change regarding the banking infrastructure. With Basel III, finalization. Now we are seeing the big bankers being scared. We actually see from Zero Hedge, Jamie Dimon's comments regarding Basel III. Looking ahead to Basel III finalization, we intend to adapt and manage to the new rules very quickly, as we have shown in the past. However, we caution that such material regulatory changes would likely have real-world consequences for markets and end users. Currently, U.S. consumers and businesses generally remain healthy, although consumers are spending down their excess cash buffers. However, persistently tight labor markets, as well as extremely high government debt levels with the largest peacetime fiscal deficits ever, are increasing and risk that inflation remains elevated and that interest rates rise further from here. Additionally, we still do not know the longer-term consequences of quantitative tightening, which reduces liquidity in the system at a time when market-making capabilities are increasingly limited by regulations. Furthermore, the war in Ukraine, compounded by last week's attacks on Israel, may have far-reaching impacts on energy and food markets, global trade, and geopolitical relationships. This may be the most dangerous time in the world has seen in decades. While we hope for the best, we prepare the firm for a broad range of outcomes so we can consistently deliver for clients no matter the environment. Now, why is this interesting? Well, first and foremost, yes, they are putting out a statement regarding what's happening around liquidity within the banking sector. They also outline the dangers regarding, war and things like that. But what's really interesting regarding this is what Basel III actually means. If I was a banker, I would be concerned as well, because Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, we already know that they have manipulated markets forever. With Basel III, these are new rules regarding gold for big banks, meaning there's no more unallocated gold, which is like an IOU certificate. Now you actually need to allocate gold, physical gold. We do see Basel Accords created in response to 2009 banking crisis. Goals is to instill market discipline, supervision, and ample reserves within banks. Under Basel III, new funding requirements will make it difficult for banks to hold unallocated gold. The gold market is manipulated, held down through the use of paper gold trading, naked shorts. The end of paper gold means market may be free to discover its true price, which is likely much higher. The U.S. Central Bank has supported gold price suppression to keep confidence in the dollar high. However, ECB benefits if price of gold goes up. And yes, this is a big standard, and this is why the big bankers are terrified of this. We also see over here, Basel III has forced banks to disclose their precious metals derivatives exposure, which explains the chart below. All the fraudulent paper manipulation is public for all to see. The house of cards is set to tumble. All manipulation ends eventually, and thanks for the subsidies, JPM. Now, of course, this was back in 2022, but you could see the amount of manipulation there is within the gold market. So with Basel III, now we are seeing things change. And by the way, we also see from 19 days ago, banks in EU largely comply with Basel Endgame, says Watchdog. What's interesting about this is what Europe is actually planning, specifically the ECB. We have this from October 14th from 801_XRP, and this is Christine Lagarde talking about central bankers and CBDCs. Listen closely to this 3-minute long clip where she is talking about the move towards the digital era.
Where are you now? Christine Lagarde, when I first met you, you had just been at LSE Square Dancing. It was a few years ago. And I think what's so important here is we have institutional forces, and Ngozi, within her wonderful article, really emphasizes institutional strength. I know you've written about it as well, but few have been in the trenches of actual trade policy like you have with your service to the Republic of France. What has to be the new trade policy for the nations of Europe, and for that matter, wealthy nations worldwide? What needs to be the new trade initiative that gets us to global economic growth as Ngozi frames it?
Thank you, Tom, for that. I believe you catch me a bit off guard because you take me back to my days as a trade minister. I would say two things. One is implement the directives and the regulatory frameworks that exist in order to free up the providing of services throughout the region. There is a service directive which has been around for years and years, of which maybe 60% is actually implemented. if only the whole directive was implemented without reservations, without caveats, without carve-out, I think we will really lift growth in a significant way, whether in relation to goods or in relation to digital, because services are largely now digitally supported. That would be, I say, number one. Number two, I think that if investment, and granted, currently the financing of investment is difficult, but if investments were to be focused on the green transition, plus the transition towards a digital economy, I think there would also be a significant upside as a result of that. And to pick up on Ngozi, I think in the digital world, the two things that need to be improved. One is we need a better governance. We have seen one trial after another one, criminal or otherwise, that the digital world can lead to abuses, including in financial services. So governance is one where we need to make progress, and we need to make progress collectively. Number two, and the European Central Bank spends a lot of effort and time on that, we also, central bankers, the holders of currency, we need to move to the digital area, and we need to be ready to launch CBDC, for us it's digital euro, in relatively short order, so that we can make it safe and have a monetary anchor that has digital traits as well.
Joyce, all of this is...
So there you guys have it, right? The plan for the digital age is here. The central bankers are already preparing for this, but we already knew this. They've been wiping documents, specifically this document, right, from 2020, which is okay because the BIS has already confirmed this thought process. So this was a report that got removed from the KPMG website. What this was beyond Basel 4, right? Now we're talking about Basel 3. Basel 3 is more heavily focused on banks providing accurate and transparent data. All right, this is the change that needs to happen in order for us to usher in the CBDC era, if you will. Because guess what? With CBDCs, we can now hold banks accountable as well because everything is going to be transparent. But beyond this, when we look at Basel 4, which in my opinion is all about crypto, like Basel 4 is all about crypto. This is incorporating crypto assets into the Basel framework. Now, this is a document from 2020. It's rough. I can't even read this if I'm being honest with you guys. But there's a few other screenshots within this that I do want to mention, specifically just one. Before we get into that, now I know that I just said Basel 3 is all about gold, but it's also about a few other things. One of the biggest talking subjects regarding Basel 3 is liquidity. They want to make the banking system a lot more resilient. How do we do that? Well, liquidity and liquidity supervision is a big thing because we know that banks have been constricted on liquidity. We know that this is only going to continue. Don't take my words for, confirmation of that. Take Jamie Dimon's words for that, because they are talking about quantitative tightening within this and how it reduces liquidity in the system, which we already know is facts. But beyond that, we also know that banks have started to collapse this year due to the lack of liquidity and also the lack of, reserve coverage. They actually don't have the reserves to cover the deposits. So banks today are, they're not transparent and they're extremely inefficient because they're not resilient. Outside of this, we also know with this post from December of 2022 from the BIS, Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, we've seen a little bit of a glimpse into the future. They want to make sure that crypto is held on balance sheets. How do we know this? Well, because they are alleviating the risk associated with crypto assets. They are talking about tokenized traditional assets. They're talking about stable coins here. They're talking about requirements regarding crypto assets and holding crypto on balance sheets. We also know that this has become a big focus over in Europe, actually, with limitations put on banks in order for them to actually be able to hold crypto assets. And here we have Group 1 and Group 2. This is meeting classification conditions, tokenized traditional assets, stablecoins, capital treatment generally based on existing Basel framework, add-on for any observed infrastructure weaknesses as well. And again, they're talking about the exposure. So in response to this, what this tells me is that they are preparing to have crypto assets either one held on the balance sheet or even just tapping into it. I actually think that banks will become major custodians of crypto, which we actually do see custodial assets here being mentioned, but this doesn't really give us too much. But I do think that we will start to see banks holding crypto. It just makes sense, in my opinion. And I think that this is where a lot of the regulatory discussions come into place regarding banks holding crypto. But outside of all of this, what I do want to talk to you guys about is going back to that KPMG document, because within this KPMG document, we have high-risk crypto assets and the prudential treatment of high-risk crypto assets. This is literally just outlining what we see within this 2022 document by the BIS. And remember, this KPMG document is from 2020. So their plans are still there today with what we know from this document, which was, again, talking about high-risk crypto assets and how they can characterize them and what will be, happening regarding them and how can we treat them in terms of like holding them on balance sheets or even tapping into them. But at the bottom there, we have other crypto assets. Now, this is where things get very interesting because we know XRP has been called a stablecoin in IMF and World Bank documents, but also we see crypto assets used for intra and interbank settlements. Okay, now we start to see the idea of price volatility being brought up in question. Why is this important? Well, if we are talking about stablecoins and we're talking about CBDCs, because again, we know central banks, they are planning their moves on CBDCs and even digital euro. Like this to me screams CBDC. We already know that the central banks want CBDCs. 93% of them are already planning their initiatives regarding CBDCs. But then we also talk about stablecoins. Stablecoins are happening. They're already a big thing. We also know that Ripple has been pioneering stablecoins for a while. The reason why I bring this up is because we talk about reducing price volatility. When we look at XRP, XRP is very interesting because of on-demand liquidity as well. Because with on-demand liquidity, what have I said in the past? On-demand liquidity creates a floor for XRP. It reduces price volatility. How? It creates demand for the token. On-demand liquidity could be seen as a floor model for XRP, meaning as more and more demand is there around on-demand liquidity, remember, each transaction taken roughly about 3 seconds, there's no loser on the other end of that transaction, so it's not a price driver, but what it does create is demand for XRP. That's going to reduce price volatility. Outside of this, liquidity. The most liquid asset in this space will win. We have started to see things being brought up in question regarding liquidity for XRP because of the automated market makers on the XRP ledger. If that does go through, I do think that XRP will be the most liquid crypto asset in the space. It already is extremely liquid, but that will only ensure it even more. Why am I bringing this up? Because we know XRP has been labeled under crypto assets designed for inter or intra-bank payments and settlements. When we talk about Basel, Basel is just another step in the direction of incorporating crypto into the overall financial system. It is going to expose banks to crypto assets. Will they be holding XRP on their balance sheet? We don't know. But I do think that what Basel is going to do is have banks moving on the side of tokenizing deposits, tokenizing maybe even their private tokens, which we already kind of see with JPM Coin and even Citi recently. And what this tells me is that a bridge currency is going to be crucial for this. But it's also the idea that when we go back to other crypto assets, XRP is going to be treated differently because it is a crypto asset that is used for intra and interbank settlements. And we even see stablecoins being talked about. We know that with Basel III, we're not looking at XRP being put on balance sheets here. We're talking about crypto services for banking clients. We're talking about crypto services regarding issuing stablecoins. We're talking about the XRP ledger being tapped in around stablecoins as well. Now again, right? Are we going to, speculate all day on this? No. We're not. But I do think that things are getting very interesting regarding the Basel frameworks and these regulatory discussions as well regarding crypto assets. Outside of all of this, though, when we go back to 2016, because this is why I brought up the Standard Chartered discussion, because back in February of 2016, we seen the cost-cutting case for banks. The ROI of using Ripple and XRP for global interbank settlements. This is where the whole idea regarding XRP utilized for inter or intrabank payments and settlements really kind of started to become a big discussion point, because XRP technically is designed for this. It has other use cases. The XRP ledger, for an example, has hundreds of use cases that are incredible. But this use case specifically is very interesting. Within this, because now we're talking about Basel III, right? And we're talking about liquidity management, and we're talking about, things changing regarding the banking system. Well, guess what? Within this document, we see for the first time, digital assets can enable real-time value exchange anywhere in the world, providing liquidity on demand and significantly reducing costs associated with treasury and payments operations. Liquidity and Basel III compliance. Now we can see the reason why crypto is being brought up regarding the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision discussions. The elites and these global organizations like the BIS have been planning the move towards tapping into crypto, holding crypto, and being exposed to specific solutions regarding crypto. And we already know that Ripple recently just joined the BIS Cross-Border Payments Committee. All of this is right on par with the IOV, the Internet of Value, and it's all on par with freeing up the NCashOfficial accounts as well. Because right now, banks are constricted on liquidity. Basel III only constricts banks even more. How can we alleviate that pain point? Freeing up the NCashOfficial accounts. There's trillions locked behind them. All of this is right on par with what we have been talking about forever. Every single major step here, ISO 20022, Basel III, regulations, all of this is steps for the go live event beyond ISO 20022 in order to incorporate crypto solutions within the financial system. DLT and blockchain is the future. We already know that. Banks holding crypto, though, that could get very interesting. But we already know that they're planning to have banks exposed to crypto assets, or else they wouldn't actually be incorporating these documents regarding treatment of crypto assets within the exposure side of things regarding banks. This is very interesting. And also, within this document, regarding Basel Committee on Banking Supervision and this consultation on exposures to crypto assets, guess what? They say this document sets out the final standard with which the committee has agreed to implement by January 1st, 2025. Why is that interesting? For those that have been watching the channel for a while, guess what? The FSB, with the IMF, the World Bank, and the BIS, instructed by the G20, said by the end of 2025, we will have crypto regulations globally. It's all by plan. They've been planning this forever. And we know from all of these discussions by the major central banks and the global organizations regarding the central banks, they've all been planning this big move. I'm very excited for the future regarding crypto because at the end of the day, right, they are already planning on banks being tapped in. Banks, in my opinion, will be holding crypto. In my opinion, banks will also be offering crypto services to their clients. I also think that banks will be custodians in the future as well. If they aren't going to be custodian services, then it's okay because they will most likely be tapping into getting crypto through, for example, Ripple's Liquidity Hub or Medico. I mean, we already know Ripple is tapping into custodian services heavily. Why do you think so? Because banks will need to have a trusted custodian in order to hold crypto assets or even provide crypto assets. And I also think that we will also be able to, at some point in time, lend XRP, which will be very interesting to see happen if we do see it. But again, that's me speculating. But I do think that there's a lot to go over here because we know forever. I mean, going all the way back to 2020, just go back to 2020. Look at all of the documents that have come out and got wiped off of the internet since then, because a lot of these documents have been removed. You can't even find them. All of them are pinpointing to the idea that they've been planning this for a very long time. And now we're seeing a lot of pressure being put on banks regarding liquidity. And they actually have to provide transparent reports regarding gold and what they are doing with gold. And like all of this, in my opinion, is right on par with the big move towards the digital future regarding finance and also tapping into DLT and blockchain. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know that this was a longer video. There's a lot to go over within this video. Again, me thinking out loud here, to me personally, I think that ISO 2022 in November is going to really kind of accelerate the move towards digital assets, DLT, and blockchain. I think that most of these major banks are already here planning, building, and working with DLT and blockchain. I also do think that at some point in time, we will start to see a lot of these assets being held by banks. Again, maybe that's me being hopeful, but that's how I see it. It just makes sense. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you guys did enjoy, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Peace out.